Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Well, happy Thursday, friends. Welcome back to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. This is episode number 25. And Happy New Year again. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's usually the end of January, the 1st of February before I really start putting some things into place. And it's given me time to get over the holidays and all the hustle and bustle with the holidays and really kind of start settling into the new year. So if that's you, no guilt, no shame. I said that in the last episode, but I pray that you are starting to put things into place, that you're starting to gain some clarity if you have felt like you didn't know what your one word for the year is or your resolutions that you were going to do. Again, no pressure. This is your life and you get to decide the timing on some of these things. But I wanted to say thank you so much. Last week, we reached over 5,000 downloads. And so that's really exciting because, you know, this was a dream of mine to start my own podcast and to know that it's been downloaded 5,000 times, maybe small for, on the scale of big podcasters. But for me, it's a big deal. It's a milestone. And I'm going to celebrate that because it's because of you and your support and you sharing the show and you showing up every week and listening. And thank you to all of you who reached out to me after last week's episode when I shared my big announcement. And if you missed it, you can go back. I've had people reach out to me and say they kind of heard through the grapevine, the story, but I just really felt like sharing it publicly because it's a story that is not just my story, but it could be your story. And I want it to be something that will encourage you. And if I just kind of share it, the end story and not the whole story, then you'll miss such a blessing. So if you missed last week's episode, I highly encourage you to go back, especially if you feel like you were sitting on a fence. I was actually talking to a friend the other day about this, and I sent her a picture because she knows that there's a new direction that she wants to go, but she's just been kind of like in a place of indecision. And indecision is a decision. If you didn't know that, it is a decision. You're deciding to just stay still and not do anything. And I sent her a picture of this little boy that was just kind of hanging on a fence and just how uncomfortable that is. And I've been there. I've been straddling the fence, and it is a very uncomfortable place, and it's not a place that I want to stay. And so last week's episode, hopefully will really encourage you if you hadn't had a chance to listen to it, or maybe you need to go listen to it again because maybe life has changed. Life can change in an instant. We've seen that over the last 2 years. But today I really wanted to share just really quickly. I don't think this will be a very long episode, but just something that's been on my heart about, I know this is the time of year where we make New Year's resolutions and we start adding things to our plate, and they could be good things, but I want you to think about 3 scenarios. I want you to think about 3 different plates. And I want you to think about, as you're hearing me talk, what's on your plate right now, not on your spouse's plate, not on your children, like what's on your plate right now. And I'm not talking about food. So when you think about, I want you to think about plate number 1. And I talk about this inside my Choose You course that I developed. Gosh, I think it's been 5 years ago that I developed. So you're kind of getting a little inside scoop into what goes on inside that course. But I shared 3 plates. So plate number 1 is a plate that has healthy food all piled up. I want you to think of your plate, what you're spending your time on and who you're spending your time with. And maybe your plate is full, it's overflowing, but it's all good stuff. And so you're volunteering at the church, you're volunteering at the school, you are a mom, That's a full plate in and of itself, right? Maybe you've decided to homeschool your kids. This year, I was talking to a friend who just recently had that shift in her schedule, and now she's not only a work-at-home mom, but now she's a homeschool mom. So that's another thing added to her plate, which is a good thing because it was a good decision for her daughter. And exercise and all of these things that maybe you're wanting to add to your plate this year because you're making some changes. And what I've found in my coaching experience is that we just keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding, and we don't remove anything. And so even though you have really good things, Bible studies and time out with your friends and all of these really good things, but if they're on a plate and they're overflowing on their plate, that plate is still heavy. It's still really hard to hold that plate up. You could probably hold it up for what, an hour, a 2 hour. You think about holding something really heavy on a plate. At first, it's really not that heavy. But then an hour passes, 2 hour passes, 3 hours pass, and eventually you have to just put it down because it becomes too heavy. So plate number 2 is a plate with unhealthy foods overflowing. So maybe this is toxic relationships. Maybe this is, unhealthy habits with your food. Maybe you're not exercising. Maybe it's, doing things because you've always done them and they're not serving you anymore. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it's a job that you just do not love anymore. And you have all of these unhealthy things that you're spending time on that, let's just put on there time wasted on social media, comparing yourself to others. Like these are all the things that you're spending your time on. So again, your plate is like your schedule, right? And plate 1 is full of healthy things, but still heavy and overflowing. Plate number 2 is unhealthy things that you're spending time on, the toxic relationships that drain your energy and your joy, the time wasted on social media, comparing yourself, again, a dead-end job, just all of those unhealthy things that are on your plate and it's overflowing. Equally heavy, right? Equally heavy. And then we have plate number 3, and it has 1 apple on it. Apple a day keeps doctor away, they say, right? But 1 apple a day is not going to be enough for you to be nourished, to have the energy. Although it's a healthy thing, not doing enough of the right things enough times for your mind, your body, and your soul will cause your body to go into starvation mode. And then you kind of go into desperation mode. You just start grabbing at straws and just adding things onto your plate because you're just kind of in that. You ever have that feeling where you're working on your nutrition? And I'm actually doing this right now and trying to get a little bit cleaner with my nutrition. And when you have depleted yourself or you're making the change and you're so hungry, and then you just start like ravaging, right? You just start grabbing it, whatever is convenient, whatever is right there at your fingertips, you can grab and eat. When you only have 1 apple on a plate, like 1 good thing going on, and you're not doing enough of that right thing. So you can go to the gym 1 time, right? And it's a good thing. But if you're not going consistently, you're not going to get the results that you want. You can go to church 1 time and get a good word. But if you're not showing up consistently and being a part of a community, how is your faith going to grow? And then I want you to think of the 4th and final plate. So this is a plate that has portion control. And you have a little bit of the good, a little bit of I'll say the things that you want to indulge in that maybe aren't as healthy as the others, but they're still fun to indulge in, the chocolates and, anything, in small quantities, right? Moderation is key. I want you to think about what your plate looks right now. Is it one of those other 3 plates, or do you feel like you have good portion control? And most importantly, are you on your own plate? When you think about your New Year's resolutions or your word for the year or what's priority for you right now, I want to go ahead and say this. I feel like I've said it on every episode. I'm going to say it again. You are only as good, or your business or your parenting or your marriage or your service to the church or service at school is only as good as you are. So if you are not on your own plate, that's a place to start. That's one thing you can add to your plate, but you're going to have to remove something off of the plate as well. Even a good thing. I can remember a season where I was volunteering at the school every Tuesday. And I did that because I wanted to be present at the school with my boys, and I wanted to be able to help the school as well. And I remember doing that, 3 or 4 years, and then realizing that I needed to put a pause on that, or I needed to take that off my plate because I was starting a new business and my coaching business, and I knew I needed to have those hours that I was going to be spending at the school devoted to that. And so it was hard to go to the school and say, no to that, and to not feel all the shame and the guilt that kind of came along with that. But I had to take something off my plate so that I could add something to it. And this seems so simple, but if you think about all the things that you said you were going to do, what was today? I think today is what the recording of this episode is January 17th. So how are you doing with your New Year's resolutions or the things you said you wanted to change this year? And you're trying to do these things with the same plate you came into 2022 with. And again, this seems so simple and so obvious, but it's not to most of us because we think we're superwoman. And we think we can do all the things. And while you may feel like you can hold that plate up for a while, friend. You can hold that heavy plate up for a while, but eventually it's going to get too heavy for you to hold up, and you're just going to put it down. You're going to put your marriage down. You're going to put that business down that you are so passionate about and that you want to grow because you're just too tired to work that business. You're going to put down maybe your Bible study, maybe your time in the Word, maybe your time at church. Like you're going to eventually put it down because it's too heavy. So instead of that happening, take an inventory of what is on your plate right now. What are the things that matter most to you based on what you want 2022 to look like? And what are the things that you need to add to your plate to help you achieve that? And what are the things that just have to come off? And again, for a season. And I honestly thought it would be just for a season volunteering at the school, but I have not been called back to do that. There have been other places that I've been able to help and volunteer, but not in that specific role. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be that once you sign up for volunteering at the church, you're there for forever. There may be other things that he calls you to, but I know this, he does not call you to have that heavy plate. That's what leads to burnout. That's what leads to relationships dissolving. That's what leads to missing moments with your children because you're too busy trying to hold all the balls in the air, juggle all the balls in the air. You're trying to keep all the food on the plate. It's overflowing and you're just trying to keep them all on the plate. And it's just, I'm a visual person. So I hope you're visualizing these 4 different plates, the one that's full of heavy, healthy stuff, but it's overflowing, the one that's filled with unhealthy stuff and it's overflowing, the one that just has the one apple on it. And you're expecting a result in your business. You're expecting a result in your marriage. You're expecting a result in your health and fitness. You're expecting a result in your mental health by doing one thing, one time, eating that one apple, or the final plate, which is the portion control. Some good things, some fun things, some areas where you may indulge a little bit. So again, just holding the plates up for a little while, we can hold that up, but eventually you're going to have to put that down. You're going to have to reportion your plate. And you may have heard this story before by Stephen Covey. It's, again, another really good visual exercise. So if you were in front of me or if you were inside the Choose You program, you would see me kind of visualize this. But Stephen Covey tells a story about talking to a group of people about priorities. And y'all know that's like my word that I'm talking about all the time is priorities. And he has a glass vase and he fills it with big rocks. And he asks the class, is it full? And they say yes. And then he pours in little rocks to fill in the gaps and asks. He asks them again, is it full? And they say yes. And then he pours in some sand to fill in the rest of the gaps in between the rocks and the little rocks. And he says, is it full? Well, now they're starting to question. And lastly, he pours water over all of it to the rim. And again, he asks them, is this full? And of course, they're all just kind of throwing their hands up. And he said, what is the point of this illustration? And one of the students in the group said, no matter how full your calendar is, you can always fit more in. How many of you feel that way? You can always fit one more thing in. This new thing that you want to do in 2022, you want to just fit it into what you already have on your plate. And he said, no. The point is, if you don't get the big rocks in first, you won't get them in at all. And here may be a mindset shift for you. You are one of those big rocks. You're one of those big rocks. And if you don't put yourself first on your calendar in pen, then it's probably pretty likely that you're going to fit yourself in your own self-care. If you don't schedule in time with your spouse, a date night once a week, if you don't put that in first, then it's highly likely that it's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months since you've had a date with your spouse. And those are just two examples. But whatever your big rocks are, and we all have different ones and different seasons, if those don't go in first on your calendar, they're not going to go in at all, because we can get busy. All the little things start filling up our time that give us what's the word I'm looking for? Not misrepresentation, but a false sense of productivity, a false sense of we're working, we feel busy all the time and we're tired at the end of the day, but are we spending the time on the things that matter most? Are your big rocks in first? And part of managing your time is getting a clear picture of what's on your plate or what you're spending time on. So maybe for you, after this podcast, maybe you need to track what you're spending your time on for the next 3 days, just like you would do if you're trying to clean up your nutrition. That was the first thing my trainer said to me. I want to know what you ate yesterday. And I was like, oh gosh, can we pick another day? Because yesterday wasn't a good day. But she was just trying to get a sense of what I like. Number one, what my eating schedule was. And, if you don't know where you're at, then you don't know how to get to where you're going. So be brutally honest with yourself. If you're spending 3 hours scrolling on Facebook right now or Instagram or whatever your favorite TikTok channel is, then write that down. Because you know what? If you want to go on your phone and just look at your screen time, that alone will be shocking to you. Probably it was shocking to me, and it will tell you the story of where you're spending your time. But maybe that's something you need to do when you get off listening to this podcast, is just do a 3-day, write out all the things you're doing with your time for 3 days. So you can kind of get a good picture of where you're spending your time. And then, or maybe it's, you already know that you're overscheduled and overworked and your plate is overflowing right now. Like the food's just falling all over the place, off the plate. What's one thing that you can take off your plate today, this week? What's one thing that you can say no to, that you can take off your plate? Because you can keep adding the good things, but again, even the good things become heavy and hard for you to hold up. So I don't know if it's removing something, if it's looking at your time, but I will tell you that one of the things as an entrepreneur for 15 years that my coach really taught me from the very beginning. And while this was specific, to my direct selling business, it really applies to life. And I don't know if you use a electronic planner or a paper planner, but time blocking and calendar blocking out your month. So look at it from a 30, 60, or 90 days. This was taught to me again by my coach, Sherry McAllister, 11 years ago. And I still use it. So look at your calendar right now. And over the next 30 to 60, 90 days, go ahead and mark out like all the most important family dates that you have coming up: birthdays, anniversaries, kids' games, all of those important things. And for some of you that are listening right now, you're like the planning queens and you may check out right now, but you may have it all color coded and everything. But I want you to look at your calendar and decide, is everything that's all pretty color coordinated in a pink pencil or a pink pen really what needs to be on your calendar? Is it really what's most important right now? Or is it just giving you a false sense of productivity because it's pretty and it's coordinated on your calendar? So do that first, because that's what's most important. I would think if I asked any of you, you would say what's most important to you is your family. So all of those important dates. And kind of a side note here, when I was really struggling with mom guilt, and I may have shared this on a different episode, but maybe you haven't listened to the previous one, so I'll say it again. But one of the most freeing conversations I had was with my children, and to really ask them, what's important to you? Is it important that I'm at every game, every practice? It's important that there's food on the table that mom has cooked all day. Also, although if you listen to the last podcast episode, you'll catch what's funny about that. But, and most of the things that I was having mom guilt over, that I was putting pressure on myself for, really did not matter to them. And so again, you may have a beautifully blocked out calendar, but there's things on there that no longer need to be done by you. And that's a whole nother episode that we could talk about delegation. I don't think I've talked about that much on here, but I've learned to be the queen of delegating. But go ahead and block those things out on your calendar so you know that you're able to show up. Because here's the thing, we don't find time, we make time for what matters most. And I think I've said that at least on every episode too, but sometimes it takes 7, 9 times for it to sink in. So I'm hoping by this point it's starting to sink in, those of you that follow the show from day one. But you think about your hair appointment. We make our hair appointments and we don't miss them because it's important to us, right? And we make our next day hair appointment from that current appointment because our hair is important to us. So, and this is just a question to ask yourself. If that's you, is your hair more important than scheduling in a date night? No shame, just asking, just some self-reflection here. Is your hair appointments and making sure your hair is more important than taking care of your physical body by scheduling in exercise? Is it more important than scheduling time to hang out with your kids? And listen, scheduling doesn't mean that you're a bad mom. It means it's going to get done. And I had to let that go. I had to let go of, well, gosh, that sounds awful that as a mom, I have to schedule in time to play a game with my kids. This is when they were younger. But if it gets scheduled in, it gets done. And so it doesn't matter if it's not sexy to schedule your date night. If you schedule it in and you prepare and you get a babysitter, it's going to happen. And that's going to serve your marriage better. So I hope this gave you some food for thought, plates and food, and that you'll pause before you add another thing to your plate and decide if it fits, or is it just going to be something else that overflows, or what can I take off so I can add this on? Again, you're in that mode right now where you're ready to conquer 2022 and you're ready to do some new things and make some changes and add something new to your plate, which is good. We should mix it up and add some newness to our life because newness brings excitement. I'm thinking that's going to be my word for the year, is either new or renew. I haven't fully decided on that yet, but we also have to evaluate our plates and determine what needs to stay on and what needs to come off. So I'm proud of you for taking the time to listen to this podcast because you're already ahead of the game by taking the time to work on you and personally develop yourself and taking this time to feed your mind with something positive and encouraging. So kudos to you for that. But I'm really excited for 2022 and what's to come for all of us. And I just wanted you to start off on the right foot by realizing that you can't just keep adding these good things to your plate without taking something off. And while that may seem obvious, I think if you looked at your schedule and you looked at your plate right now, you may find some things that need to be taken off so that you can put some of this good stuff on. Or you may find that your plate is good. And let's celebrate that. We're all a work in progress, but maybe this is the area where you just got it down pat and you're just the queen of this. And if that's you, kudos to you. Congratulations. But I'm looking forward to, again, this year, looking forward to more episodes. I have some guests coming on for our Turquoise Talks in future episodes this month and next month. Thank you again so much for following the show, for sharing the show with your friends and sending me the encouragement that you do. This is a interesting season that I'm in, and I plan to share all of the ups and downs with you here on the podcast. So thanks again. And I am always believing in you. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link, share this episode, or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.